Hello, I'm Johnny Rowland, your host of our shooting program today. We're so glad to have you. It is definitely windy out here. It is an absolutely beautiful day. I tell you what, friends, on days like this in October, it just doesn't get any better to be outside, and certainly just doesn't get any better to be outside shooting one of your favorite guns. Well, speaking of guns, this is the most unusual piece. This is a Browning pump action 22 Magnum rifle. We're going to shoot it in just a moment. We are so glad to have you with us today. We have another great show for you. You know, friends, it is so important that we educate our friends, our neighbors who don't know much about firearms on just why we enjoy shooting, why we enjoy owning these guns. You know, in the Constitution, as you've heard us say before, the Second Amendment is not about duck hunting. It puts the teeth in the word freedom. It ensures that our population, that our people can remain free against oppressive governments, oppressive powers from within and without. So without further ado, let's get another shooting show underway. We have our water bottle out here at 100 yards, and as I've stated on several occasions, I think the 22 Magnum is one of the most underrated cartridges going. So let's start today's program off with this Browning and a 22 Magnum from CCI Spear. Well, friends, I hope the wind doesn't bother you too much. We have a pretty good windscreen on our audio system, but it is definitely a windy day. We've had a front pass through here. We're supposed to get our really first cool weather of the season. I think it's supposed to be in the 30s here tonight. I think so. Anyway, this is a most unusual little gun we're looking at here. This is the Browning pump action 22 Magnum rifle. And the good folks at Britton's in Shreveport have loaned us this gun, and Britton's has really been, they've been some great friends of ours. They've supported this program from the very beginning. In fact, Marty Britton was one of the first people I talked to about the idea of having a shooting program nationally. So anyway, they've really been good friends. We do appreciate their help, and it helps us out a lot. They come across all kinds of guns from, you may find just anything in there. You know, people have some of the most unusual things at home, and if we find something that's different or unusual, as well as standard things, well, you're probably going to see it here on the show. This is a gun that, honestly, I didn't even know Browning made. And tell you the truth, it's not in any catalog we can find currently. This gun was made in Japan. It has the typical Browning rifle profile, much like the semi-automatics, this little hump back here, something that we've come to sort of identify with a lot of Browning products. It is very, very nicely made, which is typical. Just about every product we've ever seen from Browning, be it a 22 semi-automatic pistol to the great A5 shotguns, anything Browning makes is going to be pretty darn good. They have some new products that we have not examined very closely, including their new selective action 9mm pistol. But if it's anything like the high power, well, I'm sure it's going to be a real fine gun. Like I said, we just haven't had a chance to take one out and shoot it. This is a gun that I think would probably have some collector status. It's the only one I ever saw. And I guess we could call them and find out just what the production run was on these pump action 22 Magnums. But as you saw from the opening of the program, the 22 Magnum has a lot of punch even way out there. Now, one of the, if my understanding is correct, the 22 Magnum was designed to be a rifle round, and then Ruger and some other folks came along and decided, well, why not put it in a pistol or in a revolver, which I think is a good idea also. The 22 Magnum approaches 2,000 feet per second out of a rifle barrel, and we're going to chronograph it in just a moment and let you see just what, in fact, it does from this gun and from a revolver that we have on hand. But out of a full-length rifle, the 22 Magnum with its 40 grain or so bullet has muzzle energy of over 300 pounds. Now, really, that doesn't tell the whole story about just how effective the 22 Magnum is. I think is an excellent small game gun, maybe even a little much on squirrels. I think it'd be good for headshots probably. But it's a good coyote gun, things along that size, say out to 100 yards. Your trajectory with a 22 Magnum is pretty darn good. It's better than a standard 22 long rifle. You have out of a rifle, probably double the power on paper anyway of a 22 long rifle. But I've seen it sort of perform on game. I say sort of perform, shall we say, out of proportion to its size. Here we have an armadillo nuisance in our part of the country, and I've had better luck on armadillos with a 22 Magnum, say, than I have with 38 Special, which brings us around to the fact that a 22 Magnum with hollow points, I think, will be a pretty darn good home defense gun, because they have no recoil whatsoever in a gun like this, but that little bullet is moving at a velocity that is very respectable. You know, we've said many times on the program, in a revolver or a pistol, which there are several of them out there made in 22 Magnum, for someone who is definitely recoil sensitive, it wouldn't be a bad choice for a home defense gun for a woman, again, or someone who is recoil sensitive, because you just don't have the recoil. And if you place those little bullets in the proper place on your target, they can be pretty darn effective. And this is something to be thought about, because in our society today, as many of you have been watching this program for the 5 years we've been on, we do have to think about personal defense as something that it's insurance. Literally, our firearms are probably the ultimate life insurance, because one of these guns can keep you alive rather than let you or someone in your family be abused or hurt or even killed. So the thing is about a 22 Magnum, it's easy to go out and learn to shoot well, because you don't have the recoil that you would with, say, a larger gun. You definitely have noise now. Now, out of a rifle barrel such as this, it's not loud, but you get into the revolvers and pistols, they are pretty loud, because you have a slower burning powder for 22 rimfire anyway, a slower burning powder, and a lot of that powder burns outside the barrel on a short barrel gun such as a revolver. So they are loud, probably louder than a 38 Special. I would certainly say that. But anyway, it is something to be thought about for a home defense cartridge. With the hollow points performing as well as they do, you don't have to worry about going through multiple walls, or if you did have to defend your home against an attacker, well, say you didn't hit with every shot, well, your concern would not be as great, say, penetration wise. Now then, with the 22 Magnum solids, that becomes a little different matter. Penetration is very great with the 22 Magnum solid, so in a home defense gun, there's no way I would consider it solid. Now, on a game animal, a small game animal, something like that, some people are pelt hunters, hide hunters, that like the 22 Magnum with solid points, because it won't mess up the hide if it comes out of the animal on the other side, so it just makes a little hole. So anyway, well, let's see, in fact, what the velocities are from this Browning pump rifle. Now, friends, we have our Pro chronograph set up here from Competition Electronics, and this has really been an excellent chronograph. It has worked in rain and all kinds of conditions, so we highly recommend the Competition Electronics chronographs, and of course their timers have been just terrific also. So we have used these things an awful lot over the past several years. So anyway, we have a couple of shells from Federal, and this is Federal Supreme Ammunition. So let's see what it does. Then we have a couple of shells from CCI Spear, or CCI, or whichever you want to call it. So let's see what they do through the chronograph here. This is a Federal load first. Well, now the Federal is a little heavier bullet. We have 1,471 feet per second. Let's try another one. Well, now that one went 1644. Now there will be some disparity, probably not that much, but among ammunition types, you'll get certain velocity variations, but you will find among all types of ammunition there will be some velocity variation from shot to shot. That's just a little more than I expected there, about 200 feet per second difference between those two shells. That's why if we're doing a serious or lengthy test of velocities, we'll run, say, 5 to 10 different cartridges of a particular lot through to see what it did. So that's just an example of, shall we say, extreme differences in shells from the same box of cartridges. So anyway, let's try the CCI. And CCI is very popular as far as 22 Magnum. It is very commonly seen all over. Winchester also has a very popular 22 Magnum cartridge that we just don't happen to have with us today. But let's try the CCI offering. Okay, that's a little more like it. How about 1932 feet per second there? Let's try the next one. Another CCI. 1932, very consistent. Now then, friends, just to show you the variation between the handgun and the rifle version of a cartridge like this, let's see what the same 22 Magnum bullets we shot a moment ago out of our rifle, the Federal, and also then we'll shoot the CCI. Let's see what velocity difference it makes with this Taurus handgun with a 4-inch barrel. First, the Federal. All right, friends, it showed us 935 feet per second with the Federal ammunition out of this handgun. Well, that's quite a difference. See, 9 from even 1500, we're going to call the Federal 1500 out of the rifle as an average from a 2-shot average, roughly. Well, let's see what the CCI bullets do. $1,311, so we're talking about 600 feet per second difference. Like we were saying, friends, between the handgun and this rifle with the CCI 22 Magnum, you had about 600 feet per second difference, which is a severe amount. Now, 1,300 feet per second for a 22 Magnum out of a handgun is not bad performance, but it takes the rifle barrel to really show what the little cartridge will do. Well, let's try something else. Of course, it's getting a little late here in the afternoon, but let's try the rifle off some sandbags. Now, friends, we put 5 of the CCI cartridges in the magazine here, and we'll take a look at how it works in just a moment. But let's do a fairly rapid fire group here off our sandbags, and let's just see what it will do. Go ahead and pump the action. All right. Like I said, this would simulate some varmint hunting. That's 5 shots. Okay, I say simulate varmint hunting if you had some crows or maybe a coyote or something running out there at so many yards and you were shooting from a rest. So let's see what the gun will do. Let's take a look at our group. Now, friends, we have our caliper here. Let's go ahead and check it. And we're looking here at about 0.8 of an inch. Now that was fairly rapid fire. And with a scope on the little gun and taking your time, I would think it would probably do under 2 inches at 100 yards. I think that would be reasonable. So out at 25 yards, we were shooting there a moment ago with the open sights fairly rapidly. I think that's pretty good accuracy.
Stay tuned for more of the Shootin' Show after these important messages.
Get your hands off that gun, bow or fishing rod. Holding onto your equipment while you're going through the woods or climbing a hill is fatiguing and possibly dangerous. The versatile Tri-Tote all-season carrier is easy to use. You never have to drill a hole in your fine gun stock. And the Tri-Tote can be set up for your specific needs in a jiffy. Just follow the illustrated instructions and free demo video enclosed. There you are, hands-free, yet ready to shoot in an instant. Hunting and fishing have never been more enjoyable. With Tri-Tote, your equipment is secure and your hands are free to support yourself or carry other gear. How did you ever get along without Tri-Tote? Make this year's hunting and fishing the best ever. To order your Tri-Tote at this special TV price, call toll-free 1-800-231-1443. That's 1-800-231-1443.
Shootin' Show will be right back after this break for your local cable company or TV station.
You know, friends, all of us as shooting enthusiasts should be subscribing to Shotgun News, the trading post for anything that shoots. 3 big issues monthly with literally thousands and thousands of firearms bargains. Give them a call, 1-800-345-6923, a very inexpensive subscription price. Again, 1-800-345-6923. Subscribe today. Now, friends, looking at the fit and finish of this Browning is certainly what we've come to expect from those folks out there. Very, very nice machining. The wood is very finely finished. The way it works, it has an under barrel magazine here. You have a little tab here. You mash and pull the tube out, and you see once you get it so far out, then you have the plunger there. You just insert the cartridge there in the magazine. Here is the pump release or bolt release right here that allows you to release it. You have a push button safety. Push to the right is safety on. Push to the left there is safety off. A very nice package. Well, friends, I think you can tell that I'm certainly impressed with this little Browning Pump 22 Magnum. Britain's does have this gun on sale. Currently, it's around $300, I think, that they're asking for it. And, of course, I haven't seen everything. There are still guns out there that I haven't seen and don't know about, but this is the first one of these I have ever seen and handled. I don't know if they're that rare or not. Like I said, this is the first one I've really seen and handled. If one of you out there would like to add this to your collection, well, you might give Britton's in Shreveport a call. They're in the phone book for Shreveport, and talk to them about it if you wanted it. But anyway, it is definitely a fast handling little gun. It shoots rapidly and accurately, and really that's all you could ask from a gun like this. Heck of a nice deal. Well, friends, we hope you're enjoying our program. A lot of you will recognize this young lady sitting on my right here. This is Donna Mitchell, and Donna in the past has done a number of things on our program. She's done commercials for us and has certainly been a good friend and a great feature on our show. However, Donna does other things. She has a family, and she works very hard at a job that she has, and we hadn't really, we've sort of been out of contact for about a year now. Hadn't
it's
really
good to
seen
be
her.
back, though. It feels good.
Well, I appreciate that. And a lot of, we got mail over the past, certainly over the past year. I know you had a pretty little following out there. We had mail saying, "Where's Donna?" Well, Donna was off working. She was doing things certainly with her family. But a few days ago, I ran into Donna down at one of the local stores, and certainly nice to see you. But Donna, just sort of recap when you and I met. And we hadn't seen each other in about a year.
It's been about a year. Well, when I seen Johnny, I couldn't believe my eyes. I really couldn't. I was just shocked. I had to do a double take. The weight. The weight was the first thing I noticed. And I commented on that, and as we started speaking, I noticed a glow about his face.
I'm not paying her to say
no,
this.
he's
She's
not
saying
paying me
this.
to. This is coming from me, and his face was just lit up. I noticed the lines were lighter than they were before on the face, around the eyes, and I don't want to embarrass you, but I'm going to tell you what I said to him. I said, "Have you had a facelift?" And he laughed, and he said, "No, it's not a facelift. It's this new health club plan that I've been involved in." And immediately I said, "Tell me more about it. I'm interested."
Well, this is really true, Donna. I do appreciate the compliment, certainly. Friends, as you've heard me say on a number of occasions, this has been one of the great discoveries of my life. None of us ever thought anything like this was possible, to take something that would actually take you back in time, and that's certainly what it's done for me. You feel so much better. Those of us, we naturally age. Things happen as we age. I'm 46 years old, and you do age. It's okay, but what about going back in time and knowing what you know now, but maybe looking like you did a few years ago, and feeling so much better, having this energy and vitality? It is absolutely wonderful. And someone like Donna, who certainly has a very youthful appearance anyway, well, we were talking and said, she could essentially look the same for many, many years. She could retain that youthful quality that she has. Now, Donna works for a psychiatrist. And Donna, tell me something. A lot of people that come into your office, I know, are troubled,
a lot of them have weight problems, don't they?
That's true, and the weight problems affect your self-esteem. They affect the way you feel about yourself and the way you feel about others. Depression accompanies
Now, that's really a
overweight
problem,
people.
isn't it?
It is a
Depression.
problem. It is. And I mean, you have to feel good about yourself to be able to feel good inside, and
To feel good about other people, you first have to feel good about
that's
yourself,
right.
don't you?
Exactly.
Well, now, friends, what is so important about this, we have a new weight management program. And I think, of course, it uses the vitamins, it uses the products that are we make available through our health club. But the weight management program, here's what's so important. One, you don't have to go to any meetings. You don't have to go over here and sit down and talk with a group of people. You can read the book. You can start on the products. You can lose the weight in your own home. Nobody even has to know about it. Now, some people are very sensitive about that. Heck, I'm tickled to death to tell people I lost weight.
No, I don't blame you.
But this is something you can do at home, and it's relatively, compared to some other weight loss programs, I think it is very reasonable in cost. But the great news is, once someone gets the weight off, you can keep it off. You know, this is a problem with so many diets. Someone can actually lose weight, and they're so proud of themselves, and they get off the diet plan, and they want to eat real food again, and they gain all the weight back.
And the crash diets don't
The
work.
crash
We know
diets don't
that.
work.
We've all tried it. It doesn't work.
That's really true. And really, don't you find that some of these folks that lose a lot of this weight and then gain it back are actually in worse psychological shape than they were when they
Sure they
started?
are. Sure they are.
Because they feel like they failed again. And I think a lot of people feel like being overweight is some sort of failure with themselves, failure over self-control. It's really a personal failure, and I think that's one of the things that makes it so depressing. Well, friends, we can come to the rescue. This is no joke. Give us a call on our 1-800 line, 1-800-895-7916. Leave your name and address and phone number, and one of our people will get back to you. And yes, we are extremely busy, but they're getting to folks. The lag time is not too terribly long. They'll get to you as soon as they can. And this is something that, of course, this helps our program. Of course, it helps keep our shooting program on the air. But more than that, it's going to help you. It's going to make those of you who try this and are successful with it, it's going to make you a more viable physically person. And you know what? When you have more vitality physically, you have more mentally and emotionally. It makes life better. So friends, don't put it off. Call today. 1-800-895-7916. You can ask for the health program, or even you might mention the weight management program, because it is such a terrific thing. For health club information, give us a call, 1-800-895-7916. Leave your name, address, and phone number. Someone will get back to you as soon as possible. Friends, this is such a wonderful thing. Do it for yourselves today.
You know, friends, it's rare in any field of manufacture that one particular company has a clear-cut advantage over the others. Well, in this case, it's Corbin Ammunition, Corbin Bullet Company, because they make the best handgun, long gun, and even some specialty caliber ammunition that's been real hard to get in the past. If you really want your handgun or rifle to perform at their absolute best, you need to find some Corbin ammunition. For information on where you can get Corbin, information on their product line, call them. Corbin Bullet Company, 1-800-626-7266. Again, give them a call. It's a free call, 1-800-626-7266. Trust me on this one. Corbin is the best there is. You know, Carrie, I think it's as important for you ladies to know how to use these firearms as it is for us men. But you know, there's something else. We can have firearms for defense of our homes and certainly for sport, but we also need information.
Yes, I agree. I think the New American Magazine is the best source of information available in this country.
Well, I would certainly agree. The New American Magazine is the truth and nothing but the truth. And friends, if you would like to know what is really going on in this country and around the world, if you want, in fact, the truth, well, you need to get the New American Magazine. So here's how to do it. You can get the New American by calling 1-800-727-TRUE-TRUE. And those numbers, of course, are 1-800-727-8783.
The New American, $22 for a 6-month subscription. It comes twice a month. Now, friends, with your new Shootin' Show subscription, they will also send you a free copy of what the United Nations is bringing to all of us. So this is very important. Subscribe today. You know, friends, in times like these, which indeed are strange times, we certainly need our firearms, but we also need the information about what's really going on. Order today.
Shootin' Show will be right back after this break for your local cable company or TV station.
And now, friends, we're very pleased to present Art Alphin of the great A Square Company. For those of you who don't know, Art is a former instructor at West Point, and he has some of these wonderful things to say, some of the most interesting things that I've ever seen on firearms. And so let's see what he has to tell us today.
The period from 1885 through the start of World War I saw a flurry of activity throughout the industrialized world in the development of the infantry rifle. There were many competing designs, such as Mauser, Lee, Hotchkiss, Krag, Jorgensen, Lebel, Mannlicher, Viterli, Kropatschek, each with its own unique set of advantages and disadvantages. The adoption of any one particular design over another was as much caught up in questions of national pride as it was in superiority of design. Further, many of these designs went up dead-end streets as they were chambered for black powder cartridges, rimfire cartridges, had tubular magazines, or had some other problem. Some of these designs recovered from their problems and got back into the mainstream of development. Others never recovered and simply disappeared from the scene. Even worse, some of these weapons were adopted and issued by the nations involved before the design itself had reached its maximum potential. All of the designs we mentioned were basic variations of the turnbolt design, the idea for which came from the Mauser single-shot breech loader of 1871. By the start of World War I, almost all weapons that had been adopted were bolt action of one sort or another. They all used cartridges with smokeless powder and jacketed Spitzer bullets, and had some sort of integral magazine with charger loading. As a good generic representative of the bolt-action magazine rifle, we have picked the Pattern 17 Enfield. This rifle borrowed a little bit from the Lee, the Mauser, and a few other designs, and was to be, along with the new 276 Magnum cartridge, the British rifle for 1914. World War I put a stop to its issue. The tooling was transferred to the United States, and the rifle was made in .303 caliber for the British from 1915 until 1917, when we entered the war. The tooling was then converted to .30 caliber, and the rifle became general issue for U.S. forces in World War I. Most bolt actions were simple, yet robust. In order to operate, the firer grasped the bolt handle and lifted it, thereby unlocking the bolt. He then drew the handle to the rear, thereby extracting the cartridge in the chamber, and at the rear of bolt movement, ejecting the cartridge out of the weapon. If the rifle was empty, then the follower in the magazine would rise, blocking forward motion of the bolt and telling the shooter that he needed to reload the weapon. The shooter then took his magazine charger, normally a disposable stripper clip holding 5 rounds of ammunition, and placed it in a corresponding notch milled into the receiver bridge. He pressed all 5 rounds downward with his thumb and then discarded the stripper clip. Forward motion of the bolt would then pick up the top round in the magazine, driving it forward into the chamber. Downward motion of the bolt would then lock the weapon. Depending upon design, at some point during the lifting of the bolt handle or the forward motion of the bolt, the cocking piece and firing pin would be cocked and held by the sear. Upon pressing the trigger, the sear was depressed, the firing pin released to go forward and fire the cartridge. The shooter then grasped the bolt handle, lifting it upward, and the cycle started all over again. All bolt-action magazine rifles had some sort of adjustable sights. The most common were like this Mauser, an open sight mounted on the barrel. Though it is ballistically a very good sight, it is actually difficult for the shooter to use. Of the various designs, the best was a peep or aperture sight mounted on the receiver bridge. This placed it close to the shooter's eye, had the longest sight radius, and was the easiest for the shooter to recover his sight picture after he took his face away from the stock in order to work the bolt. In the case of the P-17, this sight was adjustable to 1,600 yards. Normally, however, a shooter was only trained to estimate the range to the target and independently fire at targets to 1,000 yards. Anything over 1,000 yards was normally volley fire with the range and the firing commands given by the squad leader or the platoon commander. In some armies, marksmanship training was given little attention. In others, rifle marksmanship was considered to be the primary soldierly quality. The British are a good example of this. They had learned their lesson in the Boer War, and in the early 1900s, their emphasis on marksmanship made them one of the better armies in the world. The U.S. Army also placed great emphasis on individual rifle marksmanship, and numerous marksmanship exchange programs had been engaged in between U.S. and British rifle clubs since the 1870s, and on an official basis between the armies from the 1900s. In fact, the first Wimbledon Cup was a rifle marksmanship award between the two nations. In those nations that did emphasize individual rifle marksmanship, the sling was not simply a carrying strap, as you use today, but served double duty to help stabilize the weapon during firing. The sling on this P-17 is of such a type. The shooter got into it like this. The sling helps steady the rifle prior to and during discharge, help reduce the movement of the weapon during recoil, and help the shooter reacquire the sight picture. This latter can be quite important. The reacquiring of the sight picture after working the bolt frequently took more time than the working of the bolt itself. You can see the advantage of the sling. The British Army in particular conducted a great deal of training on the manipulation of the bolt and reacquisition of the sight picture. We'll show you a P-17 in action against pop-up targets at 3 ranges and against a 4th stationary target at 680 yards. As you watch this, you'll note the shooter make a major error and then correct himself partway through. See if you can spot it. Before we go to the chart and compare the bolt action, what error do you think you spotted? In fact, the error was that when the shooter finished engaging the targets at 330 yards, which was at the edge of his battle sight range, he should have adjusted the sights before engaging the target at 680 yards. He fired his first shot without this adjustment, and the round hit well short. After adjusting the sight, he hit close to the target, though to one side. The wind was very, very heavy on the day that he was firing, and that miss was caused by wind drift. Though not shown on the tape, by the fifth round, he was putting the shots right in there. On the chart, it looks like this. The superiority of the bolt action over the single-shot breech loaders, and we're using the 1873 Springfield as a generic example, is quite obvious. Though the battle sight range on this P-17 was 370 yards, this could vary from one rifle cartridge combination to another to between 320 and 370 yards. The maximum adjust sight range could be 100 or 200 yards less, again depending upon the rifle and cartridge combination. Also remember that 1,000 yards did not represent the maximum distance that the bullet would travel. Firing in volley, effective fire could be delivered at greater ranges. In fact, British rifles before World War I had sight adjustments to 2,600 yards, and they regularly conducted volley fire training out to 1,900 yards. For volume of fire, you can see that the bolt action has roughly double the volume of the single shot. The bolt action's primary advantages in volume of fire are its magazine charging with the stripper clip and the relatively small motions that have to be made in order to reload the rifle. This volume of fire for the bolt action on the chart assumes recovery of the sight picture and taking a few seconds per round to aim precisely at one of the longer range targets. At closer ranges, such as 150 yards or less, where precise sight picture was not all that important, recovery after recoil was much faster, and the volume of fire would frequently go up to 20 rounds per minute. The effect of this drastic increase in both volume of fire and combat range in just a few short years is almost legendary. The trench warfare of World War I was a direct outgrowth of the bolt-action rifle, the water-cooled machine gun, and the new breed of artillery. Though you'll study World War I in great detail, suffice it to say that airplanes, mechanization, radios, and a number of other things had not yet appeared. These would help redress the balance and make the offense equivalent in strength to the defense. Without these things, World War I became stagnant. The no man's land between the two lines was very appropriately named. Moving in the open in no man's land, facing an enemy armed with these bolt-action magazine rifles was risky business indeed.
Well, friends, as we speak here today in Louisiana, it is an election day, and I'm so sorry the judge is not here with us today. He's been in Idaho visiting his daughter up there, and as we speak, I believe he's on an aircraft headed back this way, but he's going to be in later tonight and will not certainly make our deadline here of editing. But the thing is, it is so important. Today we have a governor's election. We have a number of other state and local offices that we're electing people for here in this state. And unfortunately, when those viewers here in Louisiana see this show, the election will be over with, but we're very hopeful. We have a pro-gun candidate named Mike Foster, and we're very hopeful that Mike has a good chance of going in. I think he's certainly going to make the runoff, and we're going to do everything we can to support him. And here's the point, friends. When we have a candidate that is running who agrees with us, who shares the same ideals, who believes in personal freedom and the right of self-defense, well, these are the people that we need to support. We need to encourage our friends and our neighbors, the people that we can influence to support people who agree with us. You know, it's a lot easier, like the judge was saying here recently, it's a lot easier if we can get a candidate in who feels in many areas like we do, rather than let the candidate get in and then try and change their opinion. it's much better to get the right candidate in the first place, in the beginning, because you know the problems we've got all over this country with people have been have not participated, have not gotten out and voted and campaigned, because a lot of us who are conservative, and yes, you've heard me say this before, a lot of us who are conservative just want to be left alone, and a lot of us tend to think, well, it'll come out in the wash, it'll work out. That is not so, friends. It has to be done. We have to make that effort, because trust me, the other side, our opponents, the anti-gun people, there are not that many of them, but they don't mind making the effort. They don't mind working and contributing and doing things, because, one, they want their dream of socialist America that we don't want at all. We're not going to accept it. So what do? That means we have to get out and work. We have to support the right candidates. We have to make our voices heard. And certainly our election system is the best way to do that. Well, I do want to mention the New American Magazine. I've said before that it is one of the finest news magazines on the scene today, available in this country or anywhere else. And they have so many things. If you haven't subscribed to the New American Friends, trust me, you need to do it as soon as possible, because you'll get the information that you don't get on the network news, on the major news organizations. They're just not going to give it to you. But the New American, the things seen in here, it is true. And as we've commented before, when you read the New American, some of you are going to get angry, but you know what? We need to get mad. We need to get angry, so we'll do something about the things that are going on. The UN is doing so many things that has a direct effect on us as Americans. Well, you know, I don't think that the United Nations ought to have a say in governing the American people. There are so many things that it's not just Clinton. It's been administrations before Clinton. There are a lot of State Department people that absolutely should have no effect at all on our lives, yet they're telling us so many things that we do every day. This should not be happening. We've got to do something about it. The way you do something about a problem is, first of all, you have to find out what the problem is. Rather than just complaining, you can get a lot of information from the New American that will tell you what the problems are. And this is so, so important. I can't overstate the importance of this. Well, we sincerely hope that you're having a good fall time of year. It is exciting today. We don't know how these elections are going to come out. We're all watching, and a lot of you around the country are having your own elections. So, friends, we've got to stay in the fight. In fact, what we've got to do, we as conservatives, as right-thinking Americans, have to turn the heat up. We have to speed up. We cannot lay down. We cannot put down our efforts. We've got to do it, because I know all of us watching this program want to have a free America, not only for ourselves, but also for our children and for their children. And friends, we've got to set it right. Freedom is a full-time job.
The Shootin' Show will be right back after this break for your local cable company or TV station.
You have all studied the deadlock of trench warfare in World War I. You have also learned that there are three major categories of solutions to the deadlock: the technical, tactical, and strategic. I would like to focus on one problem and then talk about one technical solution to it. The problem at hand is the problem of trench assault. After you have managed to survive your trip across no man's land and you get near an enemy trench, how do you rid that trench of all the antisocial people who are in it? By the time you get to the enemy's trench, he may well outnumber you, and you and he are both armed with bolt-action magazine rifles and the bayonet. Cleaning out a trench with a bayonet, though it can certainly be successful, is a relatively high-risk operation that consumes a great deal of manpower. Many armies experimented with new weapons which might help their soldiers do this job. In order to illustrate this point, we have prepared a target array which will give you some idea of what a soldier jumping into an enemy trench might have had to confront. The target array will consist of 3 stationary silhouette targets to the left, 3 more stationary silhouette targets to the right, and, after those are engaged, a surprise pop-up silhouette target that would roughly approximate an enemy soldier running out of a bunker or communications trench. As we engage this target array with various weapons, you should look at the advantages and disadvantages of each weapon going through the same target run. The first weapon will be the bolt-action rifle with the bayonet. The obvious problem with the bolt-action rifle is the long period of time between shots. The relatively small magazine capacity when you are dealing with an abundance of targets, and the requirement to go in with the bayonet. One of the American solutions was the riot or trench shotgun. This Model 97 trench shotgun is a good example of many of the weapons that were tried. Though it has a bayonet lug, it normally was not used with the bayonet. It fires a 12-gauge shotgun shell, which is loaded with buckshot. Depending on the size of the buckshot, it may hold anywhere from 9 to 24 pellets per shell. The weapon was a pump action, which means it was cycled by pulling the slide back and then pushing it forward. This motion extracted and ejected the empty cartridge in the chamber, fed a new round up from the magazine, locked it into the chamber, and cocked the weapon. The shooter then only had to pull the trigger. Due to the shortage of spare parts for this 1897 riot gun, a new Model 500 riot gun will be used. The shells each hold 13 number 0 buckshot. One of the major problems with the shotgun is quite obvious. Its tubular magazine holds only 6 rounds, and in order to reload it, the rounds must be individually inserted by the shooter. There is no magazine charging. When out of ammunition, it takes a long time to reload, and the shooter is vulnerable. The weapon appears to be very, very fast. The shooter killed his 6 stationary targets in well under 3 seconds. However, that can normally not be done in the hands of the ill-trained soldier. It took constant, repetitive training in order to achieve that sort of speed with a shotgun. Further, contrary to popular belief, you do not simply point a shotgun at the mass of the enemy and let fly. You select individual targets, aim at them, and kill them. The purpose of the buckshot is to give some margin for error. The pattern need not be perfectly centered on the chest. Secondly, buckshot kills by the sum total of the multiple wounds. The shooter using this shotgun has been using pump-action shotguns for 24 years, to include using them in both competition and combat. The average fellow with a shotgun would probably not acquit himself that well. Lastly, the remaining grave defect of the shotgun was not evident. The shotgun's maximum range with buckshot is only 50 yards. Though this is adequate for cleaning out a trench or for use at night, it leaves the shotgun-armed soldier at a desperate disadvantage when he is caught in the open during daylight. The Germans tackled the technical problem from a completely new angle. They created a new class of weapons with a new set of advantages and disadvantages. In order to gain long combat range with good terminal effect, a strong weapon, the bolt action, firing a powerful cartridge, was needed. The Germans decided to sacrifice long combat range. They took a pistol cartridge, the 9mm Luger, with vastly decreased range and energy, and chambered this into a shoulder-fired weapon. With the much reduced power of the ammunition, that shoulder-fired weapon could now be made fully automatic, and yet the soldier could still easily withstand the recoil and control the weapon. The result was the MP-18 submachine gun. You can see that the shooter of the submachine gun tackled his targets in only 5 seconds and still had ammunition for an 8th surprise target. He then easily reloaded his submachine gun with another magazine. You'll also note that the shooter engaged his targets with the proper short burst technique. He aimed at each individual target, gave it a burst, and then moved to the next. The submachine gun kills by firing a group on the target, much like the shotgun fires a pattern of buckshot. This group gives the shooter some margin for error and still assures adequate target hits. Contrary to what Hollywood would have you believe, the continuous spray is simply not effective with any weapon short of a water-cooled machine gun. As an example here, let us suppose that our submachine gun shooter was faced with 6 targets at double arm interval. This would give him a linear target width of 30 feet. He only has 32 rounds in the magazine, so he would have to have his sweeping motion perfectly in tune with the cyclic rate of fire of the weapon, and I suppose with the Zen harmony of the universe, in order to evenly space his bullets along that linear target. Hopefully, the spacing and the harmony would be such that a bullet would land on the breastbone of each of the 6 targets. Give me a break. The submachine gun is also important as an example of a design trade-off. It was a conscious attempt by the designers to satisfy a problem with a weapon that gives up advantage in one of the components of firepower in order to gain advantage in another component. On the chart, it looks something like this. Note the bolt action, which you have seen before, is our baseline weapon with a volume of fire of 14 rounds per minute and battle sight and adjust sight range going out to 1,000 yards. Remember that at close range, where the requirement for sight picture is somewhat less, The bolt-action volume of fire could go up to 20 rounds per minute. The shotgun, which looks so good in that film clip, all of a sudden doesn't look so good here. Its range is only 50 yards, and its volume of fire is actually quite low. The problem here is the reloading of the magazine. Though it is lightning fast while ammunition is in the weapon, once it is emptied, it then becomes deathly slow. The submachine gun seems to be a good blend. Its maximum range, though short, at least does not leave the shooter totally naked and helpless. As long as his movement is covered by bolt-action magazine rifles,